Hey guys, welcome to Chad Fixes the World, but mainly cars, and some other things. Welcome to the channel. Make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be showing you how to fix a lot of things, and there's a lot of do-it-yourself tips and hacks, maybe some gun stuff, house stuff. Subscribe, stay tuned, it's going to get cool. Today, sorry for the poor video quality, we're going to be doing a 1965 Jaguar XKE 4.2 liter, and we're going to be checking the fuel sending unit. And luckily we were able to fix this unit and save the owner some money and save us some time on waiting for the parts. First, we're going to remove open the boot. Now, the fuel sending unit on the Jaguars is located in the boot under these panels, which is also where the spare tire is located. The spare tire is located under the right side panel with the toolkit, and we got our fuel sending unit pump on the left. Spare tire. Here we have the fuel sender unit on the left, and we have the fuel pump pickup on the right. Our sending unit has correct wires plugged in. Now I've already checked this with a test light to see if I'm getting electricity and have my grounds and powers. I do, so now we're going to start with removal. And the green wire on the right is the signal feed. The white wire in the middle is my empty light. Now I've got the fuel sending unit coming out, and if you'll notice, well, it don't move. That float and that rod, you can see the gray junk that's been in there for a while, oxidized aluminum, and that rod should want to move freely. Now with this rod, the float will float in the gasoline and will either rise with an increase in gas level or decrease with the increase in gas level, much like a float when you're fishing with. This rod is currently frozen solid and is not doing anything, so we're gonna have to do something with that. Even with a lot of force, I cannot make this move, so we're gonna have to try to free it up and see what we can do. Now, once you get her set in a vise, there are two rusty flatheads, tiny little flathead screws that I was worried possibly about stripping. Sorry about the bad camera footage. I'm holding it with one hand trying to not screw up this screw. I was successful, as you will see, on extracting both tiny flathead screws, and we got to open her up and see what we can work with. And this is what's cool about a lot of older stuff, is they can be fixed, whereas new stuff is just a lot of plastic junk, and not a lot of it's not even made to be opened, and the plastic just falls apart. Now, sending units are basically made up, even now, of three main parts: a float, a metal arm, and a variable resistor. Here I'm pointing at the variable resistor, and that this metal arm that you see that's laying across it will sweep up and down on as the fuel level increases or decreases, as the float either goes up or drops down with the fuel level. All three of these components will work together to measure the fuel level and relay that up to your fuel gauge. Now, when I was taking this apart, I noticed that, the film, as you can see, the variable resistor either increasing resistance or decreasing the resistance depending on how it's set up for that vehicle. Now, this is very stiff, and as you saw earlier, it wouldn't move on its own weight. Now here's where I figured out that I was wondering how the low fuel light was working. I thought a piece was missing, but this plate here actually goes on and makes a contact to this upper connector, and that piece will connect with that piece onto that upper plate when the low fuel level hits, triggering the low fuel level light, which was quite a convenience for a vehicle in 1965. So I didn't actually have a broken part. Here I'm checking to make sure my float has no fluid in it. If the float begins to allow gasoline into it, it'll weigh the float down, and of course you'll always have basically an empty tank. It won't float anymore. So I've taken quite a lot of resistance to move that arm. Here's my horrible amateur filmography at work. I don't really know what I'm doing at the moment yet, but what I've done is I've used some of my favorite penetrating oil to try to free up this arm, and that is Coil Aerocoil. This stuff is amazing. I put a little dab of that in there, and then what I'm attempting to do is work those joints, and almost immediately it starts to free up just a little. I'm still having to assist it, but as you can see, it's already wanting to return on its own weight. And as you can see on the float arm, it also has that weight right there to help it return. But already, with just a little bit of coil and some manipulation, I'm starting to get the movement, the free movement that the sending unit needs so that it can operate on its own just under the floating, if that is a word. So yeah, we're starting to look good. I'm getting a little happy. It looks like I think I can make this float. So yeah, it's starting to look good. I think that we can maybe salvage this fuel sending unit. At least I've got that freed up, which is always a chore. Sometimes they don't free up properly. But I still am going to have to go test my wiring in there and make sure that my variable resistor and my contact arms and everything are actually putting out resistance. So now that we've got our float moving freely, now we're probably going to want to go ahead and test our resistance, which we can do on the bench. We're going to need a trusty multimeter. Sorry for the out of focus view. First film. We're going to need our multimeter, a couple of jumper leads, and I'll show you how you can basically bench test this float before. We're going to set it to ohms. So we're at 2,000, I think there. Get our one test lead. I'll use a positive. We're going to go to our sending unit's powered wire. I'm going to take our the other part of the lead. Now we need to take our other jumper lead, and we're going to attach to the ground of the sending unit, wherever you can on the ground inside. But we're going to attach our other end of that lead to the negative lead of our multimeter. And now we're showing some continuity, some resistance, which that's good. That's what we're looking for. Now, as you notice, as the float rises, the fuel level goes up, the resistance drops on our multimeter. That's a good sign. As our fuel level lowers, the resistance increases on our multimeter. Another good sign. I showed a little better here. This is basically a bench test that shows, hey, that our fuel sending unit is working properly, which was quite promising. So that's looking good. A couple of more times with the stroke, you can see how that arm is traveling over the variable resistor and varying the resistance, which as it should be. We're happy. I went ahead and wire brushed those ugly rusted screws up and make it a little pretty, cleaned up the inside and outside of that sending unit as best I could from all the aluminum oxidation that built up in that sending unit and all the ethanol gunk that gums up these older parts. I've reinstalled the cover. Looks like we still got a free moving float, which is promising. Now we're going back to the install. Now before I install it, I went ahead and wired it up. Here's a test you can also do. So I wanted to check my wiring and see if my gauge may possibly have a problem too. So I went ahead and hooked up my wires to it. I go ahead and ground to the body of the sending unit, and I ground to the ground wire that goes to it. And I can manipulate my float level as so. So now I will turn the key on to the car and see if I can manipulate the float level back here, and it will tell me if all my wiring and my gauge is working properly. Now let's hope that it is. So let me go with a full tank, and hopefully she will rise. And she is rising like a phoenix in the night, or like a 65 Jaguar Smith's fuel gauge. So that's promising. Let's see if she'll deflate like a wiener in the night, or a 1965 Jaguar Smith's fuel gauge. Now she's deflating too. So this is all looking good. This is showing me my fuel gauge is working properly. My wiring, I don't have any more issues. My issue was my sending unit, which on these older Jaguars. With Lucas Electronics, you never know. Look at that. Thumbs up, job well done. Or a job done well, or well done, I guess. So now we can go ahead and install her, which is not too bad. These are all flathead screws, itty bitties. As I'll point out in a second, one washer stuck, which I have a small brass washer underneath. So always pay close attention to when you're removing and going back to install stuff. I could have double stacked that washer if I wasn't paying attention. This is basically just trying to get them to start. If you can, always start any screw by hand. If you try to get in there with the screwdriver and just manhandle it, you're going to possibly cross some threads up, cause yourself some problems. So we'll get them all started by hand. Poor camera footage, I'm sorry. I think I'll get a tripod for future videos. One hand working is definitely not the way to go, so I will get a tripod. Here's my ground wire that I need to attach, and that's going to go on to that one that had the washer stuck down. So I got the screw that did not have its tiny washer. We're going to put the terminal for the ground wire there. We've got her all set up. Also, it's a really good idea to kind of slowly go through and tighten each screw a little bit. And these are tiny little screws, and I'm trying to go one hand and kind of hold the camera, so it's a little difficult. Don't just crank one screw down. You can bind yourself, and you can also cause the screw to have some binding issues, because you're gonna offset that fuel sending unit or pull it down to one side really hard. So it's always a good idea, almost on anything, especially tightening your lug nuts. Same principle applies. Just a little on everyone. Bring it all down uniformly, and you will save yourself a lot of issues you could possibly run into. Go ahead and hold that one so I can get my terminal in the spot that I want it before I tighten it down. And now we can go around and give everything a good snugging. And I think we succeeded on this mission. Not all of them are successes. They're all learning experiences, and this is cool. And it's always really cool to be able to actually fix something that was, what, 65, so you do the math. That's 50 something, 56 years old. So We're going to put our wires back on. That's our main power signal wire. This is going to be our low fuel level light. And this is our ground wire, which will ground it all together. Success.